Meet Noah. When he was 10 years old, he fell out of a tree and broke his ankle. And unfortunately broke it in the growth plate, which if you know what that means, it means that's where bones grow. That's how we grow taller. Well, and eventually, 21 years after the original accident, surgeons were able to put his ankle back together and make his legs the same length again. The magic ingredient in doing this was a piece of his hip bone that they cut out and used to lengthen his leg. But if you ask him, he's very opinionated, and I'm sure he'll tell you that he's bet on a different future, one in which we don't have to cut pieces of our bodies apart in order to repair ourselves, one in which we can use the cells within our own bodies to grow new bone should we need it. Meet Noah. When he was 10 years old, he fell out of a tree and broke his ankle, and unfortunately broke it in the growth plate, which if you know what that means, it means that's where bones grow. That's how we grow taller, right? And he'd had many surgeries over the years to try and fix his ankle, and eventually, 21 years after the original accident, surgeons were able to put his ankle back together and make his legs the same length again. The magic ingredient in doing this was a piece of his hip bone that they cut out and used to lengthen his leg. Okay, and as you can see, he's doing quite well. He's surfing in Costa Rica. He's doing great, right? But if you ask him, he's very opinionated, and I'm sure he'll tell you that he's bet on a different future, one in which we don't have to cut pieces of our bodies apart in order to repair ourselves, one in which we can use the cells within our own bodies to grow new bone should we need it. So who am I? We all have a picture like this, right? We're 8 years old, we get our first chemistry set, our smile's as big as our afro, right? So I come from a bit of a geeky family. These are my sisters Sheila and Mira, and me with my brother Neil. And we're building an arch. We're having a lot of fun when we were kids with science. And when I look at this picture, I think of a lot of things. I think about the fun we had. I think about us all getting into science. But I really trace back to this time in my life the roots of what became much more than a professional preoccupation for me. As you see, my sisters Sheila and Mira are both actually red-green colorblind, and my brother Neil has a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which has left him legally blind. And so for many of us, we have this idea that the way that we see the world is different. But for me, this was very visceral with my siblings. Biology was the root of this. As miraculous as it was, creating our bodies and in a way mediating our experience of it through our vision, was miraculous, right? But also fallible. So for me, it was quite vivid that biology was just like any other technology. I traced this professional preoccupation through electrical engineering and computer vision and telecom, getting a PhD and then going to McKinsey and circling back to academia, landing in a field called tissue engineering. And I love this picture. It's the fountain of youth, and I think exemplifies the goal of our field, which is to generate therapies that can help us extend our lives. So here's a baby picture of all of you. We all looked like this at one point. We were all one cell big at one point, and then, of course, 2 and 4 and 8 and so on. And many of us in different fields are preoccupied with this idea of how did we become the people we are? But in my case, this is the field of developmental biology, understanding how those stem cells became muscle, skin, and neuron, and so on. And for us in tissue engineering, the field of developmental biology becomes then a playbook for us to be able to generate these therapies, copying nature in order to put cells on biomaterials, put them into bioreactors, which are really just advanced cell culture systems, and copying nature in order to generate heart, tissue, liver, bone, and so on. As a couple of examples, this is from my PhD work, growing heart tissue. And as you can see, this is a piece of little beating heart tissue. It's about the size of a mini marshmallow, and it's beating. And it's not just beating, it's beating in time with an electric circuit that I'd built. Okay? And the better, I learned over 5 years of much research, that the better we could copy the electrical signals of the natural heart, the better the heart would beat that we engineered in the lab. We use this same principle in our current startup called EpiBone, where we're generating living, personalized bone grafts, perfect puzzle pieces that are anatomically precise and grown out of your own cells so there's no risk of rejection. Most people don't know this, but after blood, bone is the most implanted human material, millions of procedures costing billions of dollars worldwide. And even now, the only way to get human bone is to cut it out of a human. Okay, and this is just preposterous. And if you think about pediatric patients, there really just isn't enough bone to go around. And as the population ages and the world globalizes, this problem is only going to continue to grow. If we get injured at age 15 and we live until 115, we can no longer expect our implants to only last 10 years. So how do we do it? We take two things from the patient. First, we take an image, a three-dimensional X-ray, a CT scan, okay? And we extract the three-dimensional data out of that in order to then generate, using 3D fabrication techniques, a perfectly shaped puzzle piece, a scaffold. Okay. Onto that scaffold, we infuse stem cells. We get the stem cells from a small sample of fat tissue from the patients, from which we extract the stem cells. We combine the cells and this puzzle piece in our bioreactor, and after 3 weeks, we have a piece of living bone that's ready for implantation. Here's a short video explaining the process. Here we are machining the scaffold, growing up the cells in our incubators. That's a bioreactor, infusing with food, and voila, after 3 weeks, a piece of living bone ready for implantation. Thank you. There are many benefits to technologies like these. First of all, there's a perfect fit. Secondly, because it's made from your own cells, there's no risk for rejection. And thirdly, because it's alive, it can continue to integrate into your own bodies. We're currently undergoing what's called preclinical validation. We're testing these implants in pigs. And as you can see, after 3 and 6 months, it is almost indistinguishable where epibone leaves off and the native bone begins. We've also seen beautiful evidence of vascularization, blood vessels growing into the tissue that are filled with functional living blood cells. This is the team with my PhD supervisor Gordana holding the skull and my co-founder Sarind next to me. We're based in Harlem, New York City, which is near where we did our PhD at Columbia University. So I hope I've gotten you excited about the idea of viewing cells as living Legos, living building blocks, right? This is actually a selfie. I call it a selfie, C-E-L-L-V. It's a picture of the cells that what they look like right before they begin to attach to the scaffold. These are human mesenchymal stem cells from fat tissue, right? And with these, if we start viewing cells as living building blocks, I think it's really amazing, because we can start to think about generating next generation treatments that are fully alive and integrate into the human body. But I'm really excited to be in India to share with you my final thought. India, which is the home of half of my ancestors, and also the home of Epibone's first beloved investor. Throughout most of history, when we've been ill, we've looked above for solace, right? And around the turn of the last century, as we started developing interchangeable parts on the assembly line, and we started to view our bodies in the same way, as a summation of parts. If you needed a new heart, you might get one from a donor, or you might use one that was engineered in the lab. But this idea was still the same, viewing ourselves as technology, right? I'm so excited that our next generation therapies are so advanced that they're natural, right? That the next generation of therapies will involve looking within to the biodiverse ecosystem of cells that comprise our bodies as the source of our own healing. Thank you very much.